All right, everyone. Everything today is about the elections or something close to it in every respect. We got to talk about what Trump is claiming now about China. A few days ago, he's like, "Oh yeah, unfortunately, this was at the UN. Unfortunately, we have evidence that the Chinese intend to interfere with the U.S. elections." And when pressed on this, they're like, "Oh, what evidence do you have?" "Oh, we got plenty of evidence." If you've got evidence that a foreign state's doing that, it's going to be classified. He's not just going to openly tell reporters. Now, they take that to mean it's not true, that like he's just pulling this out of his ass. I think it's probably true. Here's the thing. Nations interfere with one another's elections. China is notorious, especially the Chinese government employs lots of hackers and so forth to do this, not just in the US, but in other nations. The idea that Russia in a vacuum is the only nation that ever hires nationals to put out some memes or has a shit posting squad or paid shills or whatever. Every single nation of any means whatsoever does this. The fact is that if you're investigating, you will find evidence of it. But if you're limiting it just to looking over Russian nationals and things like that, you're just going to find Russian influence. But if you did a more thorough investigation, you'd find that there are probably a dozen nations right now attempting to influence the results of our elections. Hell, Feinstein's driver there was a Chinese spy for years, and nobody apparently even knew this was going on. I would say that's a little bit of political interference at the very least. I mean, not an election interference, but it's the same basic principle. Here's the thing. China provably attempts to interfere in our elections. They provably do so. Just as they provably attempt to hack basically every meaningful business and military apparatus within this country on a regular basis. The United States also does the same to China and to Russia and even to its allies. You remember? You probably don't, because nobody wanted to report on it for fear of being labeled a bully or far right or something. Remember that time that Obama got a stern talking to by Angela Merkel because her personal cell phone had been tapped by the NSA? You probably don't remember that. It was run on page 2 for a day and then it was quickly squashed out as a story because the media loved Obama, thought he was the Messiah, and didn't want to piss him off. They knew he could be vengeful. With Trump, they're like, hey, it's a fun time. Trump probably likes it anyway, so he's not going to really go gunning for him. And he knows the alt media is rising up anyway. Fucking cares. We're more entertaining and interesting anyway. I was looking at the daily ratings for some of these time slots within these networks. You'd be surprised. There are so many YouTubers who are so far above. You know, if you're making an equivalent amount of content, let's say an hour, 2 hours of content a day, YouTubers of any size are way, way ahead of most of the smaller cable networks already. And some of them rival the bigger networks, like a Mark Dice or a Paul Joseph Watson definitely rivals any of the slots on Fox or CNN. It's like the funniest thing I've ever seen. PJW makes a 5-minute video, twice a week. He gets better ratings than Maddow, practically. But Trump is making this claim. Even if he doesn't have evidence, it's still almost certainly true. So he knows he can get away with making the claim. The intel agencies are not with a straight face going to come out and say, no, there's no evidence that the Chinese would ever interfere in our elections. No hacking, no memes, no nationals being paid to shitpost in a dungeon somewhere. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. They know this. They've reported on it heavily. Look, the media love to report on Chinese hackers and political influence in the U.S. for the last 30 years. All of a sudden, though, it's all about Russia, so they don't talk about it quite so much. But that doesn't mean it's not still the case. Look, China has more people, more tech literacy, way more money to spend on such a program, and a larger sphere of influence it can use in some cases to outsource labor, like with North Korea. Russia has none of these. Now, supposedly Putin is so brutal and evil and insane that he just runs roughshod over our voting machines. And they're like KGB agents. Like, it's literally spy versus spy. They come in and swap the ballots out and stuff. And they go hurrying off through the alley. They climb down back into the sewers through the bathroom, and it's very much like James Bond. And then they have to get lifted out by a robot, actually, and then they helicopter away. That's not the way that election influence actually is happening. China has notoriously begun doing the meme farm thing. In Japan, too, in all honesty, sort of the progenitors of that subculture, so to speak. Japan is definitely up there. Germany, the UK. I wouldn't be, Australia is the most powerful of all, but not because the government sponsors such things. And the United States is definitely up there. We have the most money and resources to aim at other countries to interfere with their elections. It's like when Trump was first elected. And I can't remember what context this was in. I think it was on the subject of Russia, and Trump's like, oh, are we so blemishless and perfect and without sin, or something to that effect. And I thought it was one of the greatest political quotes of modern times, actually. Finally, we have someone in there who's willing to admit what should be common knowledge, which is, yes, the U.S. government and military apparatus has fucked around a lot. Hopefully we can do less of that and actually be the good guys objectively on the world stage again. If you want people to be patriotic and be like, well, USA number one, we're always going to support our country, then make fucking good decisions in D.C. Haven't been a lot of those lately for, about 30 years. In fact, longer than that. It's been one bad decision after another since basically the beginning of the Cold War, even before. FDR made all sorts of terrible decisions, prolonged the Great Depression, plunged us headlong into wars that, at the time I think, basically the Third Reich was already getting curb stomped. Oh, we gotta save the Russians over there. Huh? Why? A bunch of communists, really? Okay. Yeah. There were a lot of people here who were averse to that at the time, too. And then, of course, creates the modern military-industrial complex, the rudiments of the atomic war, sort of footing that we now enjoy continuously for, the last 70 years. What a wonderful time. No, China definitely is interfering. But then it's not just China either. When Trump claims this, it's obviously for political reasons, just the same as when the corporate media fixates just on Russia. They're ignoring all the other state actors, and non-state actors too, that could potentially interfere in an election. They're ignoring them because they want to simplify. In order to get your message out to the public and have it be hard-hitting and stick, you have to simplify it for smaller minds. Because most of those people don't have time to actually analyze, read sources. They're reading the title and the first paragraph on their way to lunch, and that's all they're reading, essentially. They don't even read books because they don't have the attention span anymore unless you put it in tweet form. There's the problem. It really is becoming a problem with our society in holding things accountable. People don't even have the time or effort anymore to do activism, which is really letting corporations get away with literal murder at the moment, in respect to speech and expression especially. Trump is correct. China is attempting to influence our election. But then again, so is the UK. So are Australian ship posters and some Canadians, actually. So are some Brazilians and Mexican groups. A cartel is probably involved. Now, the mafia, the Russian mafia, the Italian mafia, the Yakuza, all of these groups, of course they have political leanings. They're going to do what they feel is best for their bottom line. Ultimately, it's all about money and power. That's the core of why this sort of thing happens. And the U.S. does it all the time. Except the U.S. doesn't usually passively interfere. No, it'll do what it did in Libya. So it's a little bit different. I'd say a little bit more violent and a little bit more blatantly in violation of the concept of human rights. That's about all. Peace out.